Welcome back. Let's spend a few minutes talking about price floors and price ceilings. So price floors are a legal minimum price. Typical example of this would be minimum wage. In order to sell your labor or to buy someone else's labor, you have to pay at least that minimum wage or more. A price ceiling is a legal maximum on price. The typical example for a price ceiling is going to be rent control. So let's think about these in an intuitive way that we can imagine. So if we start off, we're thinking about floors and ceilings. So we're sort of thinking about a house, right? So let's go ahead, we'll put an attic on it and a roof, and this is our super sweet house. So where do we live in a house? Well, we're going to live in the middle of it. Right? We're going to live above the floor and below the ceiling. So above the floor and below the ceiling. As long as we're in the middle, we're all good. We can't really live above the ceiling. All right, so up here, we've got a problem. And we can't live below the floor. Down below the floor, that means we also have a problem. Cool? Intuitive? Makes sense? We're good with this, right? Straightforward enough. We've got a floor, we've got a ceiling. Where do we live comfortably and everything is all good? In between the two. All right, let's take this same idea and let's extend it into our model of supply and demand. So if we set up a supply and demand diagram, and we'll go price, quantity. Note, I'm drawing this a little bit larger than the house so I can carry over. We'll throw in a supply curve, throw in a demand curve, and let's go ahead and put our price in. Now, for our purposes, I'm going to ignore quantity because this is going to be messy enough, but I at least want to label this initial price. All right, so let's carry this idea of a ceiling and a floor over to the diagram. So if we just extend our ceiling over, right, this is our price ceiling. What is a price ceiling? It's that maximum price. And we can carry over our price floor. Right, so this is our price floor. Price floor. And what is the price floor? Well, it's a minimum price. So what does that mean over here in our diagram? That means as long as price is within this range, so if P is below the ceiling and above the floor, right? So if it's at the floor or above, at the ceiling or below, so it's living in the middle of the house, then we're all good. Everything is okay. Where we run in the problems is when our equilibrium price should be above the ceiling or below the floor. So if in the case that price should be above the ceiling, we have a problem. Right? So if price is above the ceiling, then we have a problem. Just like we can't live up in the attic, we can't live above the ceiling. Same thing over here. We've got a problem. And if price should be, according to markets and allowing flexible prices, if that price, the equilibrium price, should be below the floor, then we've got a problem. Right? So if price is below the floor, then we have a problem. So what happens when price is increasing, it's working its way up, and it runs into that ceiling and can't go through it, we end up with an issue of surpluses and shortages when the price is running into the ceiling or the floor. That's our distortion that's caused by these policies. So we'll think more about what happens when a price ceiling or a price floor binds. What does it mean to be binding? It means that equilibrium price should be below the price floor. Down here, we would call this a binding price floor. So if price is supposed to be below the floor, then the floor matters. If price is supposed to be above the ceiling, right, then we have a binding price ceiling. If it's supposed to be in between, if we're in this sort of middle ground, if we're living in the house, then it really doesn't matter what the regulations are. Think about it this way. If the government says minimum wage is 25 cents an hour, that doesn't really matter, right? Nobody's going to work for less than 25 cents an hour, and employers expect to pay more than 25 cents an hour. So that would be what we would call a non-binding price floor. A price ceiling. Suppose they set the maximum amount you can charge for rent at $1 million a month for an apartment. Doesn't matter. Nobody's paying $1 million, right? In that case, it's a non-binding price ceiling. So if price is between the floor and the ceiling, then these are what we call non-binding. So we'll think more about what are the consequences if the price floor binds or the price ceiling binds in another video. Right now, I just want you to have a vision of what's a floor, what's a ceiling, and as long as we're between those, we're just fine. They don't actually matter. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.